What's next for Erick, the entrepreneur?
I mean, taking a step back and realizing that there is just a incredible lack of joy in this ecosystem. And I do think that, the Squiggle was here to make people smile. That was very much like a reason for its existence. And what's next for me as an entrepreneur, and hopefully Conduit being Art Blocks, is taking a step back and figuring out how we can get people to find joy in not just collecting, but owning and participating and dreaming about what the future of Web3 can be.
Sam, so nice to see you.
Avery, amazing to see you. I know you're in New York. We're both in New York. It's not as hot. I hope you're having a good time. Listen, we have a guest waiting for us. So we're going to skip our usual intro.
Top.
We'll pick that up next week. But we're going to bring on Erick Calderon from Art Blocks. The last Squiggle is about to happen. The Squiggle is the heartbeat of the crypto art movement.
The icon.
The icon, the DNA of it. And so he is releasing the final Squiggle. He's got some fun announcements to share with us as well. So let's just get right to the interview.
Sounds great.
All right, Erick Calderon, welcome to Gen C. Very excited to have you here. Erick, this is a momentous occasion upon us. But before we get to what that means, I want to know, how is your snow cone company going?
What? Sam, Avery, thank you guys so much for having me on. It's really good to see you guys. Yeah, Snowfro Refreshments LLC ended its operations, I think, in November of 2024. 2004. And the thing that's left is just the name. So, it seems like the Snowfro operation is at least alive in spirit. And that's
the brand of Snowfro has been built, it seems like, over decades, and soon to be well known across the generations.
It all started with some ice cream.
Was there a popular flavor?
Yeah, tiger's blood. I mean, we would make double the tiger's blood. That and wedding cake seemed to be like always the favorite ones. I think people just like saying tiger blood.
What was the flavor of tiger's blood, out of curiosity?
I think it's like a cherry. So it's two fruits. I think cherry is one of them. It's like deep red.
Yum.
It's just a fruity, delicious flavor.
Okay, well, Gen C is not listening to this to hear about ice cream flavors. They want to hear from you about your incredible work on all things blockchain. Erick, you have had such a profound impact on both the digital art space, crypto space, blockchain space. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you into this space?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot there. So I've always kind of been a tinkerer. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been making art for over a decade, just big into everything that I can get my hands on. I'm super fascinated with the idea that there's things that we can do at home today that 10 years ago, 20 years ago would have required massive manufacturing facilities or processes. I'm really excited about interactive art. And, obviously I discovered the blockchain in 2017, and that completely changed shifted my view on the idea of digital and immersive interactive art being accessible and ownable by people. I live in Houston, Texas. I was born in Mexico City. I went to the University of Texas and studied international business, started a ceramic tile business in 2004, which carries on today. And then in 2020, I launched Art Blocks. And with the launch of Art Blocks, I released the Chromie Squiggle, which is my generative art project, edition of 10,000, that is coming to a close now.
Erick, I found a post from 2022 where a renowned art magazine said you made $1.4 billion as the CEO of Art Blocks and as a generative artist. So one, I want to know how you're spending the money. And two, I actually want to know more what just like being the father of the generative art movement on chain has sort of meant for you. I'm assuming that the number is not accurate, but if it is, we have to talk.
Yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't have been without power for a week last week. That number was accurate. So Art Blocks NFTs traded over the course of 2021, 2022 at values of roughly $1.5 billion. And so that is just the value that one person sold something to another person for. But, it is meaningful transaction volume. It is meaningful.
So you're saying you didn't get all of it, is what I'm hearing.
I got Art Blocks made a portion of it. Back then royalties were enforced. And so Art Blocks, it wasn't unanimous, but Art Blocks got a small fee. And more importantly, artists got a chunk of that as well. And so it actually is what is powering art blocks today. And why, as we see little by little these established organizations within Web3, the people that I bought my first NFT from in 2017 and 2018 kind of having to shut down, we're very fortunate to have had that. I do believe long term in this ecosystem, and it's those moments that allow us to kind of guarantee the permanence of this art for even further, which I think is critical and something that's often overlooked within our ecosystem.
That's so well said, Eric, and thanks for taking us along that journey. So you mentioned that you are the artist and creator behind Chromie Squiggle. Iconic. Both of you are wearing the hats right now. I wish I got the memo. But this is a very big week because it is the week of the last squiggle, and the crypto art space is iconic. Can you explain a little bit about how the squiggles became so iconic? What was so unique about them? I really think about this as the icon for the generative art movement, but I'd love to hear your creative process and how and why you think this has become such a big deal.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the Chromie Squiggle did not start out as intended to be an art piece. The Chromie Squiggle started out as a way of demonstrating the variability that you can get from a blockchain, and just like how infinite or near infinite you can get variety injected into an algorithm to produce unique individualized outputs. And I've struggled a lot. Like there was definitely a lot of conversations on Twitter, for example, early on, that's like, this isn't art because Eric didn't intend it to be art. It wasn't originally intended to be art. That said, if you look, and last year I had the privilege of speaking to a really awesome group of people in Japan. And they asked me, they said, Eric, we know everything about art blocks. We know everything about the Chromie Squiggle. We want to see the process by which this all came about. And so we prepared this presentation with all of the previous works that I had created artistically. And every single one of them had a gradient. Every single one of them was a study of like interpolating pixels and trying to get a smooth gradient out of everything from ceramic tiles to light coming out of a projector. And so when you look at the Chromie Squiggle as, this proof of concept, it is, I guess I could have made a proof of concept in a lot of different ways. But the original Squiggle came out in 2018. It looked similar in form factor, but much more noodly. It was a lot thinner. And I used it just to show that every time that you refresh something, or every time that the Ethereum blockchain produced more entropy, it could produce a completely different shape. What happened after that is that I spent 2 years looking at these little things, and people were rolling their eyes initially, as generally happens in blockchain space. When I shared them, I think they didn't feel that special, and that I was like, well, this is just a simple squiggly line. Like there's nothing groundbreaking here. But the more I looked at it, and I come from the design space, right? I could not find another mark, another graphic that was prevalent, that was so recognizable. And, I searched, I did Google searches, I did all sorts of things. And I was like, look, there must be some other situation where like this type of figure was used, maybe even copyrighted or trademarked. And so I didn't find anything. And I was like, well, damn, this thing stands out. And, today we're having this really fun thing on Twitter where I'm asking people to share the ways that the Chromie Squiggle has kind of inspired their work that they've collected or that they've purchased. And it made me kind of just think that it's the fact, I mean, there's so many amazing artists in this ecosystem, but it's sometimes kind of hard to show inspiration from their work in another work of art, just because it's like their artwork is the whole canvas, and like the individual components of the canvas are just kind of come together to be the artwork. And the Chromie Squiggle, on the other hand, makes it really easy to do that because it's a mark that's like easily recognizable within this ecosystem. And slowly, as there's been interest from outside this ecosystem, even outside of our ecosystem. In 2020, I reached out to Jeff Davis, which is someone that released on Art Blocks on day one. And then my brother had been and I had been kind of working through the ideas of Art Blocks for years prior to the release of Art Blocks. And I said, hey guys, I'm releasing Art Blocks. Do y'all want to be the original artists? And they said yes. And at that point, the Chromie Squiggle wasn't going to be released on Art Blocks. I had no intention of doing that because it was, once again, it was a proof of concept. But I did use the Chromie Squiggle for testing. So I'd get in crypto voxels and I'd go do these like whip meetups with like Rizzle. And it was interesting that as we did these like test mints, I had people test on testnet for me. They would reach out and they'd be like, hey man, this is pretty cool. I can't wait to own this on mainnet. And I'd reply and say, well, this isn't going to be on mainnet. This is just a proof of concept. Check out these cool things that are coming on mainnet. And they expressed disappointment in that. And I felt this joy from people actually, like, not just me staring at it thinking, oh, maybe there's something to this, but there was like a group of people out there that were like, no, this is cool. I want to own one. Like, I really like the variety, etc. So last minute decision, probably 2, maybe 3 weeks before releasing Art Blocks, I decided that I would launch Art Blocks with the Chromie Squiggle as Project Zero. It afforded me a lot in terms of the ability to provide something that I could control the price. Like at one point I was like, well, I mean, I could do this for $0, but in crypto people tend to spam things that are $0, so I didn't do that. But something that I could share with the audience that I thought was going to come to the art blocks. Although I thought that audience was going to be dozens, if not maybe just like, a handful of people. It turns out a lot of people came and they were excited about it. And I think that by having the Chromie Squiggle be such a large edition and so accessible in price and so available, it allowed people to participate in not just art blocks or generative art, but also in kind of my conviction for blockchain and how it intersects with art. And I'm very grateful that I released it. And I guess the very last thing I'll say to that is there's massive imposter syndrome, I think, across the board, whether an artist, a collector, just a spectator in this ecosystem. There's so much going on. And of course, I always question, it's like, is this really art, or do I deserve this, or does the Squiggle deserve this recognition? I mean, this is a daily imposter feeling in my life. But as I started to discover original generative artists over the course of the following 2 to 3 months after releasing art blocks, because I was taken into a crash course on art history and generative art history, especially in the coming year, I realized that even back in the 60s, people were using the generative medium to demonstrate variability and to demonstrate how if you have to hand draw 600 ways of how 6 sides come together and make a cube, but you could actually just ask a computer to do that and do that procedurally, that people were fascinated by that and explore that and would lock themselves into dark rooms with no computer screens, typing into or running punch cards to like see if they could come out with like an output that demonstrated that variability. And so while that wasn't the intention of the Chromie Squiggle, I do think there's a through line there that makes it feel more relevant and more just like a part of that kind of trajectory. We've created 10,000 variations of a squiggly line with a rainbow on it. And that's kind of where it is today. And what I'm,
Well, 9,999, one coming, which we'll talk about in a second.
One is coming imminently.
Right. But I guess, Eric, I look at it that squiggles are basically like a crypto art meme to some degree. And I say that because they show up kind of everywhere, right? Like Beeple has rendered a squiggle, they were in Moonbirds and a million other PFP projects, and Jack Butcher and Grant Yoon and all these other artists interpreted in their own way. I think of like the iconic photos of Ian Rogers wearing your squiggle like on a sweater on stage. And even the fact that like I have used it as my PFP on Twitter for 3 years, and it's also the
email signature
and my email signature, and like so does Leslie at UTA. It kind of is everywhere as a little nod to the fact that you are in the crypto space, and especially like maybe the art forward side of the crypto space. And having had so many conversations with you, I do want to get to what it means to you. You're an emotional human. The fact that so many people repurpose this, they kind of make it their own, but also it's this community identifier. I think like Derek Edwards talks about this so much, right? The squiggle kind of is this DNA moment within the blockchain art space. And is that something you like step into, or is that something that you kind of are like, no, not me, go somewhere else?
I mean, I am not one that basks in the attention, but it's also like really hard to manage it sometimes. And I also want to not be a jerk and make people feel like they are an encumbrance in my life by giving me the attention. Like I am incredibly grateful and have a tremendous gratitude and appreciation for the support and for the excitement around the Chromie Squiggle. And it's weird because, yeah, I am kind of extrovert, or I think I appear to be extroverted, but like in some ways I'm pretty introverted too. Like, it takes a lot sometimes to get me out of my shell. But when we're talking about something I'm excited about, that's it. It's instant. I can talk and ramble forever. And this is something I'm just like deeply passionate for. And so when you mention like the signature, I get emails from people that I've never met with a squiggle in their signature. They don't even, sometimes they're like, check out my signature, which I think is pretty cool. Sometimes they don't even say it. And it's hard to put into words how meaningful that is. We go back, I think there was recently a Proof podcast with Derek, and he was pointing toward, or I think Eli posted like the day before this DM between Derek and I, where he was like, check out my Twitter profile, right? And I went over there and I saw, I think it was maybe the first time that somebody took the squiggle and put it integrated into who their online persona was. And I was shocked. And this is just a couple of days after like Squiggles launched, or a couple of weeks after Squiggles launched. And that to me was the very beginning of just being like, wait a minute, what? And then you got people like tattooing squiggles on their body, and you've got jerseys for soccer teams with them on. And so it's incredibly humbling. It's incredibly exciting. It definitely triggers imposter syndrome left and right. It's overwhelming often. Obviously the last few months and even the last year and a half, things have slowed down a lot and calmed down, which makes it a lot more manageable and also introspective, and thinking about, kind of what the last 3 years mean for me personally as an artist, someone that I would approach art galleries with my art in 2012 and they'd be like, yeah, this is craft, this isn't art, or whatever. Like I was, I definitely tried. I was really excited about making things that people would put in their home, to today where people seem to cherish a simple Polaroid with a picture of a squiggle on it that I sign. It's an incredible journey. It's one that I recognize very few people will get to experience, and it's meaningful. And I just wish that more people could have a similar journey. And that's why I'm so adamant that crypto and like blockchain art has a place in society, because it's still a very small group of people. And there's still a lot of the world out there that have an appetite to experience wonderful cultural artifacts like this. And I think there's an opportunity for anybody that's in this space, especially if we are able to break out of the echo chamber that we're in, to have that on a worldwide scale. And in the meantime, I feel like I've learned a lot. I definitely didn't know what I was getting myself into. I regularly regret having put myself through this, but the highs have been incredibly high and the lows have been incredibly low. And in the end, it balances out to just like nothing but gratitude for the collectors and the community out there.
Erick, that's a beautiful story. And I think that you're talking a little bit about like the 2021 days when it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And there were a lot of people tattooing a lot of NFTs on their bodies and things of that nature. There were a lot of PFPs switching around. What I respect so much is the continued dedication of the Squiggle community. And I think because it has been viewed as like an art piece, as like in my view, like really kick off to generative art being a more consumer friendly, collector friendly genre. And, I think that's why you've attracted a lot of attention from museums. And, I believe that Squiggles are located at several worldwide museums, including soon to be LACMA. I believe that's where the final Squiggle Mint is happening. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
So we have 5 squiggles that have been accepted to the permanent collection of world-renowned institutions. Again, mind-blowing. And I do think that what you were alluding to this earlier is just like the way the community has kind of come around this and like supported this. Things like the Squiggle DAO, which has, as with every single thing in crypto, including the squiggles, have had its ups and downs and kind of its like turmoil and drama. The mere fact that this technology does what it does and is so underappreciated for the core beauty of what it actually does versus what a lot of people are here for, which is totally fine too, which is to play in a casino. I'm still here and I continue to build. And I do think that is a lot of the reason why people or institutions can see some longevity in this beyond just like a typical PFP project, which I adore all of the PFP projects out there as well. The institutional side is interesting because they all seem to have collected a squiggle for a different reason. And so we're announcing tomorrow that the Museum of Art and Light has included a Chromie Squiggle for their permanent collection, which is really interesting to me in that they are the first museum that seems to be just fully dedicated to the digital medium. And there's something there in that since starting Art Blocks, and the Squiggle has been in dozens, if not of hundreds of exhibitions, not even counting like the digital art galleries that are all over the internet. We have seen a tremendous amount of exhibitions that are 3 days or 5 days. It actually harkens back to like when I was doing projection mapping stuff and I quit because I would spend 8 to 10 hours setting up a projected piece for a party or for a DJ or for a set, and then tear it down 2 hours later. And I feel like there's a lot that has been building up over history for the digital art space, and I'm very grateful for these like 2 to 5 day exhibitions. They're incredible, but we have this museum that is now going to give us a multi-month exhibition and give, Emily and Sasha and Tyler and Grant and I space. And similar to Marfa, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's going to hopefully show the people that are attracted to it are going to be drawn to it for reasons of excitement, and the people that are local to that town will kind of hopefully be intrigued and excited about what the town is bringing. Similarly, the Moody Center for the Arts in Houston, which I shared recently, acquired a Chromie Squiggle, and it's incredibly meaningful to me because the thing that really got me into light-based art is James Turrell Sky Space called the Twilight Epiphany, which is on Rice campus. It was actually one of the first dates that I went on with my wife. That piece is in the permanent collection, just steps away from the Chromie Squiggle, which is hanging at the Moody Center. The LACMA is going to exhibit the Squiggle in this year. Oftentimes in acquisitions, those things happen, and then like it takes a few years, if not decades, before they find themselves and the work finds itself into an actual exhibition. There's 2 that I am not allowed to mention yet that I'm exceptionally excited about that are also equally excited about digital. And I think they're not just excited about digital. Soon. It's not that they're just excited about the artwork itself, but I do think, kind of to your point, they're excited about the network of people and the support in the community. And I think that no matter how bad things are in crypto today, and no matter how rough things are for generative artists right now, I think it's inevitable that the generation today that is playing Minecraft and would rather get $100 in Roblox bucks than $100 in cash. Objectively been told that by many of my peers that have children of that age. Like literally, you give them $100 bill, they can take it to Target, they can take it to GameStop, but no, they'd rather have $100 to like buy an outfit inside of Roblox, right? Yeah. And that generation, I think, will be interested in interactive, engaging things that are a little bit beyond the canvas. That doesn't mean that static fine art is going to go the way of the symphony, which, you know, I have a lot of times expressed like a deep sadness for. I can't drag someone out to the symphony if I pay them to come out. And if you do drag them out to the symphony, like there's always an ambulance there, because people that go there are generally in their 90s and like barely make it through the performance. I mean, it's just like a dying cultural artifact. And I don't think that's going to happen with static art by any means. I think that it's just so much more of a reinforced institution. But do I think that someone that's born today or born even just like in the last 20 years would prefer to go on a date to potentially something like Super Blue or somewhere where they are actually engaging and interacting with the art versus going and looking at an oil on canvas painting of a boat sailing off into the sunset? I think so. I think that we are losing context in this culture. We are one of the lowest context cultures in the world. If Japan is one of the highest context cultures and you can nod at someone and they know exactly what you're saying, in the US, people are like, wait, what did you say? You know, like you can spell it out. We're berated by things, video games, ads, just everywhere we look. And I think that it trains our minds to need more to be fulfilled. And I think that this art of this generation of the, you know, the digital art variety with all the options and opportunities that it brings and all the community that it brings and all the interconnectedness that it brings just seems to fill that hole. Even for me as a 43-year-old person, I imagine that future generations will appreciate that. So these institutions that are already collecting Chromie Squiggles and other digital art from this era, I think are demonstrating that they understand what's coming, or at least are aware of what's coming, and also expressing appreciation for the dedication that a lot of the artists have in this space. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I think, I just can't imagine one day we're going to wake up and be like, that was fun, let's start emailing ourselves pictures on attachments again. So these are the cultural artifacts of our time. And I think it's just the beginning from outside of Web3 looking in.
And Erick, I think, yes, the institutions are coming. Traditional and crypto art collectors have both collected the works, both yourselves and many of these artists. What I sort of love is, because you are always so both art and community first, and all of the things that you've brought to sort of allow people to participate in this momentous occasion of the final squiggle. So I know you have some things where anyone can engage with the final squiggle as well as the squiggle holders can. Can you just like also explain how you brought the community into the final piece?
In this acute awareness of in Web3 kind of being on the balancing between being additive and being extractive, after years of what felt like just kind of extraction across the ecosystem, it was really meaningful for me to like put something out there that didn't cost, I mean, it does cost money, it costs gas, but beyond that, like put something out there that people could participate in and feel like they were part of something that was bigger, in my opinion, than just like one individual mint of a Chromie Squiggle, or just the fact that you own a Chromie Squiggle. Anybody, whether they own a Chromie Squiggle or not, can send any amount of ETH as little as one way, which is 18 decimal places on Ethereum, to the smart contract. And the smart contract actually sends you the money back. Obviously, you have to pay some transaction fees to engage on the Ethereum blockchain, and it permanently records you as having been here today. And we say this a lot, right? Like, who's still here? Like, who's still out there? This is my 7th year in crypto. I'm starting my 8th now. And who's here is critical. And what I think is even more interesting for me with this project is, especially from a perspective of like trying to be additive, is that I'm seeing people respond to my tweets and messages that I haven't seen in 2 years and 3 years, sending really warm messages and notes and expressing their gratitude and their excitement around all of this. And they may not even own a squiggle anymore, because for a lot of people, a single squiggle they minted for $20 paid for their wedding or a down payment for their house. But they're still here and they're still participating. So it's actually a remarkably simple smart contract that I had the true honor of working with Def Beef on, which is an artist that I just hold in such high esteem, where you sign the contract, and then in order to kind of attach you and your presence and the fact that you're here today to Squiggle number 9,999 that's going to the LACMA. The smart contract itself will initiate the transaction for Squiggle number 9,999. So there will be, if you look on Etherscan for Squiggle number 9,999, when it's minted, there will be a breadcrumb trail immutably connected to the smart contract, which will be a list of everyone that's participated. And if you happen to own a Squiggle, it also counts how many Squiggles you have, because I feel like people that own Squiggles need to be recognized also for their participation. But oftentimes when I talk about, for example, Marfa, this year event that we have every year, I go to great pains to make sure to include even the people that can't come to Marfa in like my messaging around that, because not everybody has the luxury of having a Squiggle. Not everybody has the luxury of traveling for 24 hours to get to the desert, but we're all here and we're all part of this community. And so it felt really important that even if you didn't have a Squiggle, in fact, I even more encouraged people. I didn't even bring up the Squiggle counts until the very last minute, just to make sure that people didn't feel like there was something there that made them feel any less important than anybody that does own a Squiggle. That contract will mint the last Squiggle, and it'll close on Monday, possibly by the time that this episode already has aired. But what's really fun and exciting, and I'll give it alpha on this episode, I'll be tweeting on Monday, that something that doesn't get talked about a lot is that Squiggle number 9,998 has also not been minted. And so Squiggle number 9,998 will be burned on Tuesday, I think, of next week. I haven't finalized the date, into the smart contract. It'll be locked there forever. So the owner of Squiggle number 9,998 will be this smart contract, and technically every single person that has signed this smart contract as well. So it feels like a way that I can kind of get people, even if they don't own a Squiggle, to participate in feeling connected to a Chromie Squiggle. This will be like the people Squiggle. The idea of art blocks and the Chromie Squiggle were meant to be a democratizing feature in the world of art, and a way for letting people participate that might otherwise be intimidated or shut out of the art world. And so to me, it's really important to be able to also include this penultimate Squiggle and give it to everybody that supported me and participated. And yeah, I mean, it's just, this is a simple little sweet thing that we put together that took a tremendous amount of work on Def Thief's side. And on my side, it's been in the works for over a year, but very happy to see it come together. Very happy with the amount of support we've had so far. I think we have about 1,500 people that have inscribed the contract, and just very excited to see the community kind of come out and share a little bit of joy and excitement around what we do after just months of slogging through, as Sam Spratt would say, the muck of, this like depths of Web3.
So I know what I'm doing later this afternoon. And, I wanted to close by also touching a little bit on your entrepreneurial journey, Erick, because you're an artist, but as you share a bit about how you're looking to spark joy, there's so many moments when you've done that through art blocks and through your own sort of personal brand and community, whether it was like the friendship bracelets thing comes to mind. That time we did the charity, the Stella Artois and water.org thing, which was amazing. We raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity in like an hour and a half. That was amazing. It was like a little thing, but that had a big impact and ultimately provided clean water for thousands of people. I love that you're always finding these moments to like put joy and put purpose into what you're doing outside of just a purely monetary way. But you've also you've had a lot of interest from big companies and big brands. We just talked a bit about Stella. I know you've done some stuff with Red Bull Racing. You've done some cool stuff with Bright Moments. What's next for Erick, the entrepreneur?
I mean, taking a step back and realizing that there is just a incredible lack of joy in this ecosystem. And I do think that, the Squiggle was here to make people smile. That was very much like a reason for its existence. And what's next for me as an entrepreneur, and hopefully Conduit being art blocks, is taking a step back and figuring out how we can get people to find joy in not just collecting, but owning and participating and dreaming about what the future of Web3 can be. Back to this idea of additive and extractive. I mean, to me, oftentimes I'm looked at as like running a company like a charity or like an artist sometimes, because I feel that there needs to be balance, yin and yang. Early on in art blocks, it was incredibly important to me that, especially as insane amounts of money were being transacted, that charity was a major part of what art blocks did. And art blocks facilitated artists to donate over $50 million to charity in those times. And what's sad today is that is contingent upon the sale of generative art, right? So like those numbers are down, not because of any less
50
interest.
million? That's amazing.
50 million in our first year in business,
million.
more than our revenue for the year.
Oh, wow.
So it feels like there needs to be balance, right? So the friendship bracelets is meant to be balanced. The Heart and Craft project I had the honor of doing with Jordan Lyle, meant to be inexpensive, accessible, give people something to do with their NFT and find balance. This smart contract with the Squiggles is meant to give people balance. Things like the curatorial board for Art Blocks, like those are efforts that were made. We did early efforts towards preservation at Art Blocks that, kind of got swept away with the mania. And now we're starting to really focus on thinking about preservation and what the future of this work is. And yeah, it's on chain, and anybody that has access to the Ethereum network can download the Chromie Squiggle algorithm and stick it into an HTML template and run a Chromie Squiggle. But thinking more about the future. So my job today, I feel like more than ever, beyond looking at ways of generating revenue from a community that is completely exhausted and has very little left to spend, is to reinvigorate people around the joy of what's happening. Like the Chromie Squiggle farewell contract, it just would not have been interesting if squiggles were stored on a server somewhere and people were buying them with credit cards. The CryptoPunks project would just not have been that interesting outside of people that are hugely nerds on generative art. Like I think if I would have seen that on Reddit, I might have paid a credit card and bought a punk, but like it wouldn't have been the same unlock, this massive unlock for this ecosystem. And I think that we, not just me personally, not just Art Blocks, but this ecosystem as a whole has to work really, really hard now to think about fun, innovative ideas. Oftentimes they can't be measured by profitability, but what you can measure is what it does for the brand and what it does to like bolster the brand and to get people outside of this ecosystem to give a crap about what we're doing. Because this is all I do. I go to conferences and I preach that the number one thing that we can do is get people outside of Web3 to find a compelling use case for NFTs beyond speculation, beyond scarcity, beyond utility. And y'all, it's hard. It is so hard. I pour every bit of my like time into it, and I have barely moved the needle on that. But collectively, I think we can do it. And it was easy to do it at the Thanksgiving table in 2021 because everybody was shocked by how much money things were worth and how much money you have made. And so, but like people went down the rabbit hole of Art Blocks, people went down the rabbit hole of CryptoPunks well before there was financialization, well before there was a path towards monetization. People went down the rabbit hole of making generative art well before there was any opportunity to make money around it. There is passion here by collectors, by creators, and I think we just need a little bit of a spark. And I want to dedicate as much of my time as I can to try to find that spark again, because I think if we can find that spark and not tie it to casino culture, we can create compelling interest from outside of Web3 into what we're doing, and that supports every single artist in this ecosystem and every single collector as well.
Yes. Well, Erick, first of all, thank you for spending the time with us. We're both very excited about the last Squiggle. We'll both be writing our names on the contract, or I guess our wallets on the contract. Thank you for sharing your general story. You're always so amazing and wonderful to talk to. And I think the spirit of crypto, where we want it to be, is so embedded in the story that you've talked about, which is not always where we are. I would also be remiss to not say happy birthday to you today.
Oh man.
And so therefore,
Wow.
yeah, I just want to make sure we acknowledge that special moment.
Man, I'm like 98 years old now.
You're definitely 98 years
you
old.
And Benny started wishing me happy birthday 17 times a year. Thanks. I'll take it now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. We'll all be paying attention to the last Squiggle, and also excited for bringing more joy to the space. We all need it.
Well, thank you guys for also bringing attention to the space and for giving me the opportunity to come on here. It's very, very meaningful. And you guys are very much a part individually and a part of my journey. And I'm just very grateful for you guys sticking around, not giving up on stuff.
Still here.
And still here, clearly.
We're still here. We love it. Erick, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Happy birthday. And I'm going to cross my fingers for POVCon.
Thank you.
Avery, Erick is a gem. Literally like my favorite person, the best brand ambassador that crypto has. What did you think of our conversation?
+1, adore Erick. We've done a bunch of work together over the last few years, and he's a joy to work with. He's like a big thinker, and I love, how he sort of concluded this of wanting to spark joy, spread positivity in the crypto space. And also, you were really holding out on us about his birthday.
Well, all right. To be fair, it wasn't actually his birthday. We would say
we've
we probably wished Erick happy birthday 9 times this year. So whenever we have the opportunity, we do it. Yes, exactly. Because he just deserves it, and he should get cake. So yes, Erick is, I think, someone who does bring the big picture to light, and also is, I think he's humble. But the fact is, he has made so many artist careers. He has made so many people sort of try crypto. I'm rarely at an event with anyone in the digital art space, but that could be anyone from like MoMA. I was with the Museum of the Moving Image yesterday. We were at Christie's, and like everyone knows, respects, loves Erick and wants him to be a part of this because he inspires them to think of this as a broader thing than just like crypto assets that are things to flip and make money on. So I think he's one of the voices we continually need in our space.
I absolutely agree. Sam, great episode. Loved it. Big news on the last 2 squiggles, not even the last squiggle. That was new
That was a
information
good,
for me.
yeah, that was a nice little piece of alpha that hopefully people will go sign. By the time this comes out, they'll have missed their shot. So if we can get this out early enough, then maybe you have a few minutes to get involved. All right, Avery, we'll talk to you soon.
See you, Sam.
Thanks, Gen Z.
Can't Gen Z.
Peace.